Look, I'll admit it. I consume the internet. I don't just browse. I feast and gorge. I'm deep in there, rotting my brain on questionable Reddit threads and green text while dodging sidebar ads on 123movies.com. Absolutely inhaling like a Roomba that just found a dried mystery stain. And I can tell you, there's a lot of dumb stuff that people are saying out there. But there is one word that no matter what rabbit hole I find myself in, always seems to pop up like your mom right when a sex scene plays on the movie that you're watching. Oh, I know you've seen it too. It's inescapable. It's coming for everyone and everything. Nobody is safe, and now it's arrived at Elden Ring. Slop! I've seen a lot of weird negativity surrounding Elden Ring Nightreigne, and I'm not really too sure why. A lot of people are out here calling it slop. I mean, I know there will always be haters, but still this came as a surprise to me considering how well received the original game is. But after thinking on it for a bit, I think I might know why. It could be because of the asset reuse. We've seen all these bosses before, and the base game was already chock full of reused assets from previous games. Or maybe it's the fact that Nightreigne is a multiplayer game, releasing in a time where 5v5 arena shooters and live service battle pass BS is somehow both incredibly successful and incredibly unsuccessful at the same time. If you're one of the people who's hyped for Elden Ring Nightreigne, then honestly you don't really need to hear this. But if you're one of the people who enjoyed any amount of From Software Souls games, but are somehow put off by the announcement of Nightreigne, maybe even calling it slop, then this one is for you. Over the past decade, as From Software has released Souls game after Souls game, they've come to be known for their lore, including 9-foot-tall sexy wolf people, shoeless women, and of course a man named Johnny Sins who can't seem to get enough of pushing you off a cliff. You might be the type of person who listens to a 10-hour lore video explaining the entire history of the Lands Between, and then tries to tell their girlfriend only for her to understand about 10% of what you said. At this point, with how in-depth you people go, I think one of you might literally be able to find a needle in a haystack. The point I'm trying to make is that the lore and world building is obviously a huge part of what makes these games successful. But I think the foundation, the real set of legs, which are girthy and packed with muscular teardrop quads that allows everything else to stand, is the combat experience. With as complex as the combat experience can get, especially in the later entries like Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, I think things can get a little bit lost, because what really makes this system shine is the basics. The very core experience of light and heavy attacks, dodging and blocking, is simply so good that it carries the entire series. We know this is true because when you look at combat from game to game, it's honestly not all that different. So it's obvious that the core experience is top-notch, and all that we really need is more content. And now that brings me to the bane of Souls games, which I think has always been replayability. Replayability is always up there in the conversation, with Elden Ring maybe even being the worst offender. In Elden Ring, there are literally hundreds of items to choose from. There's so many weapons, armor pieces, and accessories, and it allows you to put together an absolutely immense amount of builds. Once you beat the game, starting fresh with a different build can be a very fun way to experience the game's content again, and you're probably going to want to experience some of those playstyles that you missed the first time around. Now, here's where the problem is. Because many of the weapons and items in Elden Ring are simply objectively better than others. Out of all the hundreds of them, only a portion of them are something anyone actually wants to use, and fewer still are relevant to your build. Elden Ring is huge, but when you look at the world in perspective of your build, most of it can effectively be ignored. When you think about it, there's essentially hotspots all around the map, each one containing a component of your build. The game basically becomes a speedrun. I mean, you hop in, and then you rush to each one of these spots and collect all the components of your build so that you could put it together as quickly as possible. There's a ton of optional content in this game, and if I were to just pick a number off the top of my head, honestly, it might be like 70% of the game that you just don't even have to engage with at all. You could even ignore entire areas. So as you're rushing from one spot to another across the map, you're ignoring all of this optional content. Now, you may be asking, why would you do that? Right? Like, if I'm complaining about skipping content, then why don't I just not skip the content? Well, here's the deal. I want to play through the minimum amount of content required to complete my build so that I can play the maximum amount of content with my build. And I'm sure a lot of you would agree with that sentiment. Now, this problem gets intensified by the fact that a lot of really awesome weapons Even some of the best ones in the game require you to basically play through the entire thing to acquire. Arguably the best weapon in the game, the Blasphemous Blade, a weapon that I don't want to rush to get. When you look at it, all that you have to do is kill this one boss. But just getting there, just getting up to the boss room, is an absolutely insane grind. Let alone leveling up your character so that you're even strong enough to defeat the boss. I'm using Elden Ring as an example here, but honestly this problem has been going on for so long now. I remember in Bloodborne days, on one replay, I sprinted through the early sections of the DLC as soon as it became accessible, severely underleveled, and then I got some random person from Discord to basically solo Ludwig for me so that I could get the Moonlight Greatsword, and then play the rest of the game with it. So to sum up the point that I'm trying to make here, while having a ton of build variety makes it really accessible to a lot of different people, it does not really encourage replayability unless the build is something you could obtain really easily. Now for a second, I want you to think about how many Elden Ring randomizer videos you've seen. It's probably the most downloaded mod of all time, just randomizing the game. And I think that clearly shows that there's an appeal to not knowing exactly what steps you have to take to get your build together. The concept of randomly encountering bosses, randomly finding weapons and equipment, and the feeling of anticipating what will come next is what really gets people's nuts quaking, myself included. And this concept is exactly what Elden Ring Nightreigne is.
Choosing your build, exploring the world, fighting enemies and bosses, acquiring new weapons and equipment, leveling up your character, and even learning bits of lore.
These are all what Nightreigne is. But what Nightreigne isn't is monotonously dragging your ass across the entire expanse of the lands between until your build is ready, and then only having Radagon and a bunch of early level areas that you're way too strong for left to complete. Just like your first time exploring Elden Ring, you no longer know exactly what you'll find behind that dungeon door. You have no clue what weapon that boss will drop. And even though it's your 10th time stepping into the same boss arena, you still have no idea what abomination is going to appear and try to step on your nuts. And who knows, bitch? Even the chests might surprise you. Elden Ring, but replayable, is so incredibly genius when you think about it. What better way is there to create a fantastic game than to take a Game of the Year winner and solve its biggest issue? Much like Elden Ring, Nightreigne is having an open network test where you'll be able to play and experience a portion of the game before its official launch. I'll be covering the game on this channel, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see that. Also, I didn't even really talk about Nightreigne being multiplayer, because it's already confirmed to have a solo mode. So just go in solo if you don't want to deal with the oh so pleasant people from the Souls community. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you think of the game so far. Are you planning on picking it up? Waiting for reviews? Still think it's multiplayer slop? Let me know, and as always, have a good one.